bang on 11 o'clock. Oh, here we go. Yeah, good morning. If you just plugged in, bang on the button at 11 o'clock. That's good. Welcome along to the next webinar from the RPMA. My name's Richard. If you've been to any of our webinars before, you will know my dulcet tones already. But this morning, we're going to be firing a few questions and having a bit of a discussion with the chairman of the RPMA, Mr. Tony Mitchell, who is with me this morning. Morning, Tony.
Yes, good morning, Richard. How are you?
I'm seemingly recovering from the weather that we've had. I hate talking about the weather, but it's been a bit outrageous in Wellington, and I think it's been a bit outrageous up north as well. So, if anybody that's here today has had a challenging property management experience of roof being blown off or tree being going through the wall, yeah, you have my sympathy. I know what it's like when the storm rages outside and the phone rings. Always good fun. So,
Yeah, well, it's turned a bit cold up here in Auckland, Richard, which is quite unusual for us.
cold in Auckland.
Yeah,
Who
no,
could believe it? Who could believe it?
I'm sitting beside the heater as we speak.
Yes, me too. So now we had some pretty stupendous floods, although I didn't encounter anything, but I'm not out and about as much as I used to be. So anyway, so welcome along, hopefully to a few more attendees this morning. They might be coming in late. I know that we're all very busy, so we're not going to take up a huge chunk of your morning. Um, so yeah, as I've said already, Tony Mitchell is our chair for the RPMA. And he's going to be fielding a few questions. If you do have any questions, fire them at us through the chat feature, and we will answer them as best we can. But Tony, what's your view of the rental market right now?
Yeah, look, actually, I'll just check before we start if everyone can actually see the screen, and also not just the screen, but also Richard and myself.
Yeah.
Just checking, Mikey, you might have to come off mute and tell us if it can be seen, because I know my screen is in view.
Oh, I can see everything at this
You can
end.
see everything. Can you see us talking as well, or do I need to do this?
I can see both of us.
Okay, can you see both of us now without that?
Yes.
Okay, well, very good. Well, you're all set to go. So look, how's the rental market? Well, look, I believe, thank you, Pauline. Pauline's just let us know that it's all good for everyone. The rental market is, well, actually, you've been out of the market now for a few months and
Yeah.
enjoying, I believe, a bit of a break. So, yeah, unfortunately, Richard, I think it hasn't changed as much as what we would have liked.
Mm.
And look, when I look at coming back from holiday or the Christmas break, there was a bit of optimism. The weather was warm. Students were coming back in. People were looking for places, and I thought,
Mm.
okay, we're not going to see a boom, but we're going to see, I think, good, stable volume, and the supply and demand equation will be equal. That seems to have petered out, and a bit like summer, unfortunately. And look, now when I look at things, I can see that we've really got a little bit of a challenge still ahead of us. I think the worst is behind us, and I'm just going to flick this slide. And to me, that picture on the left, it's meant to be cooling or cool, as far as where we're heading in the market. So there's four things that, from my perspective, are really going to be a headwind or a challenge for property managers over the next years. Sorry, eight to 12 months, 2026, and maybe the start of 2027. So those four things are property supply, migration, how many people that can earn a wage that are coming into New Zealand, what's the government doing with the interest rates, and what's the overall impact on rental prices. And this, to me, when I look at the numbers, but I guess the graphs on the right hand side, the equation is that it's still a bit sluggish, and the balance is still in favour of the tenant. Now, whilst we're not opposed to that at all, we like a good equilibrium between suppliers, supply and demand, with landlords, their properties available, and the amount of tenants. That means we can keep, rates, I guess, fill rates going quite nicely. Landlords don't get too upset with vacancies. Tenants don't have to, compete for properties too hard and for prices. But unfortunately, when we look at it at the minute, the supply of property is still quite high.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
we've seen the number of new consents go down. That's what that chart on the top looks at. And we've seen, particularly, it's been townhouses that have driven it over the years. That's come down, but we've still got oversupply. The consents have slowed, but the product coming on the market's still there. And then net migration hasn't held to the heights that we would hope. So we don't have the
Mm.
new people coming in. Interest rates with the Trump factor, they're all over the place. And rent prices, I was hoping that we'd seen a modest growth or stability, but we're still ranging between 1 to 3% decline versus a year ago. So around
Yeah.
about 2%. That varies by pocket. But, overall, whilst it's still an amazing business model that we're part of, it's still going to be a little bit cool for us over the next 8 to 12 months.
Now that we're going into winter, I guess that it's just going to stay a little bit lower than you would be comfortable with.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. And, I had a surprise this morning too. I mean, I did have a landlord that wanted me to put the rent up for one property, and we put that in place and offered another year fixed term, and we'd waited and waited and waited for the tenant,
Mm.
and now we just got 21 days notice from the tenant today.
There you
So,
go. And
those sort of little challenges where I think you used to get tenants sign up straight away. Now they only have to give 21 days notice. That
yeah,
gives them the ability to go and have a good look, have a good hunt to see what else is on the market for the same price or even less.
even
And then
less.
they
Yeah.
can move on in 21 days. So yeah, that's something we're going to be challenged with, I think, over winter still.
Yeah, I mean, I had a realism check just recently. One of the real estate agents that I have regular contact with said that his rental in Kelburn in Wellington, he wasn't even getting people coming to the viewings. And I said, drop your rent. He said, oh, we've dropped the rent twice. And I said, just you've got to keep dropping it until you catch a fish. And now we're seeing four-bedroom houses in Kelburn, which is next door to the university, going for 650 a week. And so
Yeah,
that's a bit of a shock when you'd be expecting to get 800 for that.
yeah, for sure. And my
Yeah.
son's down there benefiting from that at Victoria.
Yeah, there's a, well, when there's a downside for one person, there's quite often an
Mm,
upside for somebody else. So,
yeah. I've managed to get 8 students in one house, as you'd expect.
never did student houses successfully.
Yeah.
I'm too much of a dad.
I
So,
pity the property manager looking after that one.
yeah. So you reckon that rents are still sort of, I mean, your graph there hints that rent prices might be climbing, but would that be accurate or is that localized for your area?
Well, when you say the rent prices here, if I'm just got my little pointer out, it's from 2020, December 2015 through to 2025. What it
Mm,
shows is that it's flat or declining. There was a little
yeah,
bit of a peak post, all the borders
yeah,
opening up and what have you, but it really is flat to declining at the minute. And we're still awaiting for the latest numbers to come out as we roll into towards May. So,
yeah.
and yeah, look, I mean, obviously, the property managers, as we know, Richard, need to work through their own views on what prices should be, but the price is certainly a factor that the tenants are looking at and using to their advantage at the moment.
Yeah, I think it was just over the last 2 or 3 years, seeing what the political scene has done to the property market. And of course, everybody wanted house prices to be going on the way down and rents to be going on the way down. And the government seems to have achieved that. But the government's got rid of it, what is it, 6 or 8 thousand contractors. And so that's a market that's just not coming into Wellington at the moment. So,
Yeah, look, the government, as you know, was hell bent on, bringing down the price of homes to
yeah.
purchase, and they've achieved that. Rental prices, not just rental prices, but the interest rates have come down, which means first-time buyers can now look to buy,
Mm.
which is another factor. And then you're also getting people that have invested in these new builds. They now have had enough and want their money out and are putting them on the market. So, the housing market is under a bit of pressure, but it's still a good investment. It's just that the star returns that were there, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, are not there now and probably won't be there for the next 5 years. But there's
Yeah.
still a lot of investment from developers. They just need to figure out how to actually get those properties to the market a little bit more cost effective in the current environment. And
Yeah.
whilst oil is currently high at the minute, that's certainly not going to help.
No, that's true. That's true. So, um, there's rumblings from the government yet again, I have to say. I've been here before. They're talking about regulation for property managers. And we've both had this discussion. I've had this discussion with heaps of people at property management meetings and gatherings. And yeah, how do you think how likely do you think regulation is going to take place? And how would that impact on the market?
Yeah, look, there's three things I think when I look at what's happening in the overall marketplace from governance and compliance at the minute. So, regulation and compliance, I should say. Three things that are going on. One is healthy homes. The second is the methamphetamine regulations, and the third is the light touch property management
Yeah.
regulation that the government's talked about. If you go back to, well, last year at our conference, I presented a slide, and I think went back about 40 years. And the upshot or the summary of that slide is that regulation's just inevitable. If you look at the progression that we've had with rules, regulations, compliance in the property management area, it's such an important area for New Zealand, for New Zealanders, that the government has no choice but to put in regulation or improve the regulation that's for property managers in particular. Now, whilst we thought that could have been here by now, we thought it would have been in by 2024 if we look back 5 years ago. The reality is that certain, I guess, economic issues happened that the government then needed to adjusted to. They were concerned that regulation might actually increase the cost of housing, might actually, because it would reduce the supply. Landlords would be less willing to put properties on the market. But here we are. In the second quarter of 2026. What do we find? There's an abundance of properties. Rents are compressed a bit. So
Mm.
that really hasn't come to fruition, and regulation could have been put in. It just was a prioritization issue for the government at that stage. When I look at what we've heard, yes, light touch regulation will be put in, and I've got a brief on the slides there. That's going to include a registrar. So you're going to have be registered as a property manager. You'll have to meet minimum education levels. You will need to deliver ongoing or ensure that you have obtained ongoing professional development. You'll have to abide by a code of conduct. You will be subject to a disciplinary tribunal, and you will also need to have proper trust accounts set up to manage money. So look, all those sort of things, I would hope good property managers are already doing and more.
Yeah.
But this allows us to keep out the riffraff. And so look, I'm really pleased that the government's now pushing forward with this. They're still not pushing forward fast enough. So whilst they've said that they're going to do it, they haven't yet introduced it into Parliament as a bill. So we're not yet seeing anything concrete come out of this as to the time frame. And so for me, my role is to lobby hard to get this in as soon as
Yeah.
possible. The reality is that they're probably not thinking until 2027. And I guess, well, that all depends on elections as well, and how popular and what people
Mm.
will see. But, our job is to push forward with this. I think, when I look at what the RPMA already does, and I'll cover this in a minute, but, we already hold our members to those things. And so from my perspective, this is a minimum that must happen. And the only issue for me is that with what the government's proposing is that it creates a list, but it doesn't do a strict enough test or audit for the people that go onto the list. So I think it still leaves the industry a little bit vulnerable. because that means is that they'll deal with things at the bottom of the cliff, or with an ambulance, rather than actually figuring stuff out at the top to weed the bad players out. Because as I said, 99% of the property management organizations are really, really good. There's just a few bad players that actually give the industry a bad reputation. So look, no firm date. My job's to lobby for this. But as long as you're part of an organizational body like RPMA, you can hold your head up proud, and you can talk to them about, you're already in compliance with, and more with, than what the regulation light touch will be.
My understanding of the compliance requirements now, because that's enlarged your responsibility as a property manager or as a landlord generally, is to comply. That creates more work, and more work. Most people want more pay, which means potentially regulation could mean the price of property management goes up. Would that be fair?
I think, look, I think when I look at what property managers are receiving out there, some people, I think the balance is fair because of the service that you then deliver if you're doing a good job as a property manager. And it's up to property managers to really explain that. Like if you're an independent landlord, you find someone through the local rag that takes on the property, they pay the rent on time, you're good. You might live close to it, you can get it done. A lot of people aren't like that. A lot of people need property managers, they need someone to look after their property. Good property management people, businesses will already be doing most of this already, or should be doing
Yeah.
it, and it protects them, and they'll need it for insurance. So I think property managers need to really get their positioning correct and put the case through to the landlords as to why a stitch in time saves nine. There is value in the service that we provide, but that's up to the property managers to really convince. Look, I think the other thing on the methamphetamine regulations, if we just look at that first and foremost, there's clarity there now.
Yeah.
And it does mean that at least, there's, before, the industry, I think, was taking up a lot of time and energy, being scared and overdoing things or underdoing things as far as checks or cleanups. And at least now, the landlords, they know the levels, they know what they need to do, and they can go forward with confidence. So there should be, from my perspective, there should be savings in that for the industry as a whole, in particular the insurance companies, obviously.
Yeah.
I do think, maybe, when this first came out, I was on the Mike Hoskins show, and I was complaining that, no amphetamine level is acceptable. It's, why should we accept that? The landlords don't want it. We don't want people smoking meth in properties. And I did hear back from the government on that. It was good that they gave me a call, and they did re-emphasize that actually you don't have to wait till 30 to end a tenancy. If there's one or two micrograms that are found, and that's post a previous test, that can prove that the tenants have been using.
Mm.
And you are then able to go through the normal system and apply for the dismissal of that tenancy. And I think that's something that the feedback from my perspective to them was that you didn't communicate that. You just had raised the level and you'd made it okay for people to actually smoke up to 15 micrograms. But that's not the case. So, really what I'd be encouraging property managers to discuss with their landlords is get that test between each tenancy. Make sure that you test the property and you have a base level. Because if you've got suspicions that someone is smoking, if you then do another test and it does show an increase in level, that is grounds to go to the tenancy tribunal for dismissal. Really important point, and I don't think it was shared enough by HUD at that stage. Um,
So, of course, with the RPMA is very involved in securing this kind of compliance and regulations and etc., which probably makes it even more important that property managers look at joining an association like the RPMA.
Of course, you and I would say that, but it's
Yes,
true,
we
and
would.
I'll talk to that in a minute. I did just want to talk about one more thing though, and that's healthy homes. So the majority of properties now under property managers, you would hope, have all got compliance. But I did just want to just put a warning out there, because it's not just about bringing homes up to standard. It's now about what comes next. And if you look at what HUD will be doing, the tenancy services will be doing, they will be doing audits, they will be doing checks on compliance, and they've got investigation teams to do this. So look, we have already seen last year there were a couple of big property management organizations that had been fined. And, that's a clear warning that it's not just about, hey, yeah, we're 100%. Actually, you're going to have to ensure that your properties remain at that level, because at some
Mm,
stage, the auditors or the investigation team is likely to ask questions, and you'll need to be able to prove the data.
yeah, yeah. Got to have
Mm,
good records of everything really now. That's good.
okay. Now, I think your question before was a segue into what the RPMA does. And look,
That
we,
was a
we don't
stab
talk,
at it.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. We don't talk enough about, the activities and the work that we're actually doing out there in the marketplace. And whilst there's always more that we could do, we've really had to focus on, these four areas. One is professional development. One is ensuring we uphold industry standards with our membership. One is being an advocate for you and being the public voice, and also lobbying the government. So we've been fairly active, and the professional development in particular is the cornerstone of what we offer. These webinar sessions, from my perspective, we've had some very good attendance over the years that we provide these, and it's pretty much available to all members, and we do also invite non-members as well. We
Mm,
run a national conference, and we also had a record of 24 people, property managers, through the level 4 course last year, which is a huge undertaking for the organisation. So very, very successful. I'd also just like to point out is that, we have a disciplinary tribunal. So we had 3 reviews last year to make sure that we investigated any misconduct.
mm,
The most complaints that we do get are not about RPMA members. I'd just like to say they're very, very rare. But we do at times look to give feedback and advice to landlords and to others where there has been a non-RPA member that may have acted inappropriately, and then offer a suggestion as to how they could move that forward. Another part that we do for holding up standards, Richard, as you know, there's the awards, and a key part, a cornerstone of what we do at the RPMA is the annual awards that are always highly contested.
yeah.
Media engagements and lobbying, and I'll talk about next actually what we're doing this year with the lobbying. But what I did want to say is that when I look at 2026, the council, obviously Richard's on the council, but the council and myself taken a step back and really looked at, what's going to make a difference for the membership in 2026 and beyond. And the key outcome of that was late last year, we agreed on employing a CEO. So it won't be a full-time CEO, but they'll be doing 15 to 20 hours a week. So hopefully you all saw the advert that went out through Seek for a fractional CEO. That's the new term these days for a CEO that's not a full-time role. It means they can do a couple of CEO roles. Richard's a big supporter of this. So and look, we're very close to making an announcement on that. And I'm just doing the final checks and references and what have you. But
Yes.
that will be a significant, I guess, step forward in what we're doing. Really have someone who's focused on the property management that's contracted to us to be able to go and deliver. At the moment, you're relying on the goodwill and volunteer work of myself and Richard and David and Cynthia and Carl to really get on and do it. So we're going to move forward on that. We've also got Micah, who's on this call. Micah's some virtual support for us as well, and that will of course continue. But the big ticket items, once we put that in place, will be getting the CEO to really step up what we're doing in education, deliver the level 4 course this year, continue the webinar series, and also put on a bigger and better conference. And the next thing for me that, we know it's highly relevant, but we haven't done enough marketing on it, is the RPMA registered property manager designation. So being able to promote that point of difference that our members have. to landlords, to the industry, and also the tenants, but just to make sure that they know that our members already have this. That comes with a high degree of confidence that these property managers know exactly what they're doing and will do a great job for you and your property and for the tenants. And that's on once that's pretty close. Those top three are all pretty close together. If I had to say what we're really focused on the next few months. And then it becomes advocacy and lobbying. There's two things that are happening at the moment. One is the meth regulations are still being checked and tested, and David Pearce is on a subcommittee with HUD for that. I am working with HUD on something different regarding tenancies, but as and when various media opportunities come up, we'll be there voicing what needs to be voiced. And in particular with the meth, we were heavily involved in that I think it was November when the announcement came out. So I know that we haven't run a special webinar based on that now, but we felt we did a huge amount of work earlier. And I think we probably, we need to remember that, okay, when it comes into play, our members need a refresh from us as to what this change means and what they should be communicating through to their landlords. And look, not the last one, but the last two, we're going to be offering a corporate membership this year as well. So
That's
currently
interesting.
we're individuals. People can join as an individual, but there's really benefit in sending our chief executive out there to talk to property management businesses and say, okay, here's the investment you would require to be a corporate member, but here is the benefits, the return that you will get and service that will be provided. And we're really going to be going out and asking the industry, the independent players, for support, because we absolutely believe that the industry needs it and they need it as well. So we're offering something different that we haven't before. I'm looking forward to having conversations with various business owners on that.
Yeah, I
And
like that.
yeah, look, and the final part there is upholding standards. You can't underrate this. It's not just the awards. We'll be running the awards again, but also where there's concerns from landlords, we'll be looking to hold members to account. There's some of the ones that we've had that's most of the times, if it's involved our members, it's a misunderstanding or miscommunication between the two. We've been able to help and provide a resolution for that. But that will absolutely continue. And so, Richard, in a nutshell, and nearly in what is I think the 30 minutes that we had, that
Yeah.
covers the big topics for this year. So happy to take any questions if there might be any out there from the
Yeah, if
people
anybody's got a question, just fire it into the chat. Tony, have we got a timeline for the conference, when the conference is looking to be?
We have a general time frame in July, but we don't have a specific date. And I knew you would ask me that question, and I haven't got the date. I think we as a council we did agree on a date, and I desperately want to launch it. And post this, we'll be sending out confirmation of that. I
Yeah.
just need to check just a few things that there's no clashes for people.
Yeah, because there's a few other events around about the country, which is, well, it's a good thing. But yeah, I'd urge anybody that's listening in today to schedule in your trip to the next conference. I think it's going to be an interesting one if I have anything to do with it.
No doubt you will.
I won't spoil your fun, Tony.
Much appreciated.
No. So, yeah, so do we have, I haven't seen any questions popping up. Oh, yes, I have. Hold on just a second. All good, says Pauline.
Yeah,
She's
that was
obviously
from at the
earlier
start of the
on.
meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, it doesn't look like we've got many questions going on, but um, thanks for turning up to the session this morning, everybody. You can also see our previous webinars on the RPMA website. You have access to those as well. So dip into them. There's a wealth of information there for you. And you got any last words, Tony? Which is not something you want to be asked.
Oh, look, yeah, no last words. I've just enjoyed the catch up, Richard, and
Hmm.
almost whenever I get the chance to have a chat and talk about the industry, it just re-inspires me. So looking forward to 2026.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, we shall leave it at that, I think. So thanks for coming along and thanks for listening and digesting the information.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.